Hey, there's Master Fans. We're back, and today we are looking at a Macintosh Quadra 610. This is one that I picked up at the recycler. They didn't have any way to test it, so I know nothing about its functionality. And as you might remember from some of my earlier videos, I am not a Macintosh guy. I'm not really much of an Apple product person, but I'm excited to take a look at this and see if we can get it running, get it hooked up, and add a Mac to the collection of towers. So let's get started. All right, so after a nice superficial cleaning, we've kind of got this one set to hopefully open up and just take a look inside before we try powering it on. I did find all of my Mac-related cabling, which is kind of a miracle, as you can imagine, with all these computers around. There's lots and lots and lots of cables, and Macs are one that I don't have many of. I have a couple of older Macs, I should say, but for the most part, I kind of stay away from Apple products. There aren't many that end up in the recycler. I think a lot of these end up getting sold to Mac enthusiasts, is probably where they should go. But once in a while, I see one pop up. But a lot of the times, they're laptops and they're in buckets of water, and Macs don't historically do well when exposed to a lot of water, whereas PCs tend to be a little more salvageable. But we've got a serial to PS2 converter here, or actually this might be ADB looking at it now. Yep, that's an ADB to 9-pin serial converter. I'm not sure what I might need that for, but I did find this pretty cool. I assume this to be from a Mac, because I kind of remember them having these sort of see-through plastic 90s era connectors. Regardless, we're going to use this for our power when we get to that point. But the biggest thing I found was this little guy from the Nerstrand School District. So shout out to them when they were tossing some e-waste. I happened to acquire some of it. This is pretty cool because it lets you determine your output modes. And to be honest with you, I'm not really sure which output mode I'm going to need to select. But I'm going to start with just VGA SVGA, which is probably what this system uses. So that's dip switches 3 and 4 need to be activated. I love dip switches. It's just something you don't see after a certain era, but to find this kind of connector in the wild was pretty great because it converts the serial video adapter to the VGA. That is pretty standard, although the one thing I will say is there's a base missing on this, but that's okay. So now we've got our video, and of course standard VGA. I've got lots of these, so have that on hand as always. But to open this up, it's kind of interesting. So I was looking this over, and not being a Mac expert, the top of this actually just feels loose. And I realized it's just these two little tabs, but these are fairly brittle. And so when you actually go to open this, you want to be real gentle so you don't snap the plastic. And you probably want to keep a finger on top here, right behind, to kind of give it some back pressure so you don't just snap your plastic right off. So it should lift up and then just kind of gently pull out of place here. So we're just looking to see what this thing's equipped with. You know, does it have a hard drive? Does it have anything in here? And it looks like we've got just a loose ribbon cable here, CD drive, floppy, but I don't see that there's a hard disk. Now, I want to take a look at this because, again, not terribly familiar with Apple products. So this for me is a first, really. It's got an interesting slot, Motorola processor there with no heatsink. It looks like the hard drive was removed, so no operating system. So we'll have to fake in a hard drive here. And it looks like this is an IDE connector, but it's pretty wide. compared to what I'm used to, but it has been a while. Could be a standard IDE for all I know. We've got 2 sticks of RAM in here. These are Texas Instruments made RAM. That's kind of interesting. Looks like it's got onboard cache, but look at these power connectors. It's got a 3-pin header connector off main, and that looks to be the only thing powering this board other than this little ribbon connector over here, which I think is actually, no, that's a CD audio. That's fascinating. Aztec power supply, which is pretty cool. Definitely different. It's a pass-through power supply. We've got the standard looking floppy drive here. So my only concern really at this point is, I mean, we'll be able to boot to BIOS just to test to see if this works. But with no hard drive, I'm hoping this is standard IDE. I do have some drives that are IDE, but I may just use a more modern hard drive with a converter, assuming this is a standard. That way I can partition off a Mac specific just to test this, and then I can always throw a hard drive in it later. But really, it's fascinating, this system. It's very clean. I don't see any obvious issues. There's really no capacitors on this board. It does have a lithium battery for the onboard battery, and it has an expansion PCI port there, which is really cool. I do think it's just really cool to see this Motorola processor. Now, Apple people are probably thinking, like, why is that so fascinating? Well, to be quite honest, I'm not used to seeing Motorola chips in something this modern. So I guess color me ignorant on Mac architecture, but I'm really intrigued. So first thing we'll do is we're going to do a power on test just to see if this boots up to the BIOS screen, and assuming that everything is working, we'll have to try and get a hard drive in. So that'll probably be part 2 and part 3. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit that like, subscribe button. Drop me a comment. Do you know anything about this system?